Hi, I'm Zach, and welcome to Vessels of the Breakor. Welcome! We're about to walk through 8 different classes of vehicle that feature with the Brightcore. They range from escape pods, to shuttles, to fighters. All serve a purpose. For some, that purpose is excelling at survival gameplay and PvP. But for all, that purpose is also answering the question of, how does this ship that would need several dozen crew at minimum really work? Well, I've probably put too much thought into that, and now we have a small fleet as an answer. First, let's start with the Helper. The Helper has been around for a long time in my builds. I first made use of an early version of it trying to wrangle a Prototech gyroscope into the guts of the Guarantee. It's a small tug, some extra storage, some extra weld speed, and some light. I've added some basic AI functionality that allows it to follow the user at the press of a button, a remote control block and camera for remote control, and Mother OS integration. This version also has action relay integration for transit between sections of the ship. On the Breakor, its intended usage is maintenance and repair of the main battery. Railguns take a lot of components. 2 help vessels have space to dock on the weapons deck, and can access the main battery through the double hangar doors above them. Next is the Kucho. This is a densely packed 7-seater escape pod. The Brightcore fits 6 of them. I have 2 friends that I play Space Engineers with, sometimes. Even if I could manage to build the Brightcore on a survival server, that amount of escapability would never be necessary. But for our made-up crew, they're deeply important. They're housed on the Brightcore's lowest habitation deck. Outside of the one included in the workshop download, they do require a manual install, and though they'll print in the off state, enabling the batteries and thrust will let you back them in and connect with either of the Kucho's small connectors. You can find some tooltips on the consoles between the escape pod chambers on the port and starboard, or east and west sides of the Brightcore. Now, there's the default way to launch and the pretty way to launch. In the default version, you enter the escape pod chamber, open the hangar door, and slam the big red button on the inside. You can wait for the door to open, or you can make the Kucho do the waiting for you. The pretty way requires some hand jamming of an event controller and that big red button, but you'll find the Kucho comes with both. The launch on-door open event controller just needs to be pointed at the appropriate hangar door, searchable as escape pod hangar door, and the number on the LCD in the room, and the big red button needs to be changed to opening that hangar door. Now you can close the pod door before opening the hangar door and escape in comfort. Slap the blue button to fly to a beacon or a GPS location of your choosing, or you can get there yourself by stepping into the cockpit. But before we do that, let's appreciate that we've got oxygen, food, medical supplies for whatever journey lies ahead. We're also tracking power and oxygen consumption from the cabin, and you can annoy your friends by turning the lights on and off. Once inside the cockpit, we can see some similar statistics as we had in the cabin, but now we also have an artificial horizon, flight-relevant details like ship mass and velocity, and of course a toolbar cheat sheet. Note that the launch function in the cockpit would also need to be replaced by opening the hangar door if you wanted to escape the pretty way. To prevent potentially explosive decompression in the event of a vacuum rescue, the exterior is equipped with pressurization alerts and a button to depressurize, which can be overridden by passengers if they so choose. To prevent a catastrophic landing in the event of escape into a gravity well, the Kucho is equipped with 2 parachute hatches, enough to safely descend on even the heaviest rocky planets. And to prevent not being rescued, the Kucho broadcasts its location once a minute. Even though the Kucho is not the most heavily utilized vessel in this group, it is among my favorite builds of any sort. I always appreciate the feeling of getting the most out of whatever I'm building. Moving up in size, but just barely, we have the Tug. Like the Helper, the Tug has been around for longer than most of my large grid ships. It pushes and pulls like all other tugs, but anytime I have a combat hangar, I also include a weld wall. This tug has 9 projectors, meaning that you can assign 9 separate blueprints to the tug, build an attachment point, and pull a new vehicle out of any of those ships. It also has toggleable gyroscopes that let it comfortably manipulate up to 100,000 kilogram grids, while only being 18,000 itself. But the toggle still lets you fly the unladen tug without being oversensitive. Quickly moving on, we have the Mala and the Kostra. These are medium-sized weld and grind vessels for which, like the Kucho, the primary requirements were maximizing utility, in this case storage, while still fitting a standard size, in this case a large grid gate. Fun fact, the name comes from the taxonomic class Malacostraca. This class is the first taxonomic category above the humble pillbug, but I felt I could split into 2 reasonable names. Pillbugs are commonly known to consume heavy metals without issue, and I felt the name, function of the Kostra, and general appearance all fit well together. The Mala, our welder, gets a little bit of extra storage, while the Kostra, our grinder, gets a scrap metal ejection port in its place. Beyond the color and the different tools, these are the only differences. Both stick with the layout, giving them 4 large cargo containers of storage. Since I think the blue looks better in this format, we'll just be looking at the Kostra. These vehicles aren't incredibly complex, but I do like making things as user-friendly and info-dense as reasonable. You'll notice cargo readouts on the exterior, and on the inside we track power, mass, acceleration, and stop time and distance. Something I imagine useful in a vehicle with a mass that will fluctuate throughout its usage. Similar to the tug, the Mala and the Kostra contain toggleable gyroscopes, but they also have an observation turret for scoping out the job at a distance, and a remote control block specifically for backing into tight spaces and using the tow functionality. Lastly, like all newer vessels, the Mala and the Kostra are fitted with a docking logic system that toggles between a docked and undocked state. While setup of the system does take more than just making a group with everything in it and tying toggle off to the connector state, I've found this system almost feels luxurious after thousands of hours of either using a startup/shutdown timer or just plastering the things that I want to turn on or off on the toolbar. It's a minor feature, but the sum of half a dozen minor features meshing with specific requirements make the Mala and the Kostra feel quite complete. Our next 3 ships each actually have their own videos, though all 3 vessels have been updated to varying degrees since then. Still, those will go a little more in depth in some ways. So this next ship, the Robox, is a pretty recent addition, and due to its mechanical complexity, it has the highest amount of logic blocks per volume in any ship that I've built. Excluding the observation turret, the Robox uses 32 mechanical blocks and almost as many timers and event controllers to achieve 3 separate functions. The first of these is a ramp. The Robox is a crew transport shuttle, designed for both orbital and suborbital usage, and though it lacks any combat capability, it is rated for more rugged terrain. The ramp covers the rear and only door, and uses 3 hinges and a piston to extend and retract. It is designed to disable the Robox's main thruster when extending, preventing damage, but in the event of that thruster being manually toggled, the ramp will automatically retract. It is also linked to the air vents in the cabin so that the cabin will depressurize when the ramp extends, and pressurize if the door is closed when the ramp retracts. The second of the Robox mechanical features is its landing gear. The ramp and 2 legs readily form a tripod. Yes, mag plates and landing gear can resist massive forces at completely insane angles in this game, but this looks and feels better and supports the general concept of being a little bit more utilitarian. The last thing that I have on the landing gear is a warning. Subgrids, mag plates, and grids that aren't stations don't mix. However, if you find yourself in this situation, don't panic. Turn off your dampeners, and if you haven't let it get too far, it'll sort itself out. While we've genuinely got a few more features to cover here, the final mechanical one is seats. Look, I didn't say this vessel was conveniently printable. Each of those 32 mechanical blocks creates a subgrid, but if keeping you safe and alive while undergoing significant acceleration is a matter of practicality, then this is a very practical boat. Each of the Robox 10 seats rotate forward and then tilt, meaning the experience of a passenger is less grabbing onto a bench and trying not to get bounced off the ship as you fly away from Pertam, and more of, this recliner is really intense. The less mechanical features include a full suite of programmable blocks for radar, damage, artificial horizon, power and gas, and Mother OS integration. Like many of my shared builds, there are also several screens to help you, and me, navigate the functionality of the shuttle. The lower section is equipped with a refrigerator, microwave, and a refill station for those longer trips. Lastly, similar to the Mala and Coaster I just covered, the Robox has an on and off switch that locks everything down while still allowing necessary access. It maintains a small, separate power grid to ensure that the startup timer block has juice whenever you return. So that's our shuttle. Fits in a double gate, lands and takes off from any planet we've got while keeping the passengers alive and comfortable, and handles like a bus, because that's what it is. It's a space bus. And now, we've got our combat vessels. Similar to their real-life counterparts, they're bigger than a bus, even if they only fit one person. Unlike their real-life counterparts, these are expendable and intended to be reprinted without much fuss. Their size comes from their cargo needs and maneuverability. The design philosophy here is simple. Put a lot of ordnance downrange, and don't get hit. With that, we have the Ruka, the smaller and lighter of the two featured combat vessels. Its mass is 65,000 kilos dry and 100 wet, and it can fit somewhat snugly in a box 5 large grid blocks long, which is good because that means the Breakor's combat hangar can fit 2. The much smaller Pelagic can fit 8 with a Coastra and a helper in the same hangar with plenty of room to spare, but that's a frigate designed around long-distance engagements. That's not the Brightcore's function. The Breakor serves, sometimes literally, as a fleet's center of gravity when it comes to ship-to-ship engagements. Operating a flight deck doesn't go hand in hand with the direct fire that the Breakor is intended to endure at times. The Ruka is 22 autocannons, placed in front of the cargo and engines, that move those guns around. It carries 2 large hydrogen tanks as well as 2 O2H2 generators to supply its thrusters. It has 44 small thrusters and 8 large thrusters, which is the thrust equivalent of 17 large thrusters, knocking this thing around, which is necessary. Autocannons have an 800-meter range, and if you're flirting with the maximum there, you'll only have 2 seconds to respond to incoming Gatling or autocannon fire, less for artillery, and less than a second for a good railgun shot. The Ruka can fully jump out of the way of a shot in a little under 1.5 seconds, meaning that just slapping A and D periodically will keep all but the most accurate shots from hitting. But if you're dodging with intention, ducking is faster, with an acceleration that gets you clear in 0.8 seconds, or you can move to a side as well as down while rotating on the long axis to just fling yourself somewhere else. It's pretty fast, but it is honestly a pain in the butt to do on keyboard, and dodging individual shots itself can be pretty distracting to other aspects of the firefight. With that in mind, just orbiting your target while accelerating in random directions is more than enough to throw off anything but the luckiest of shots, which can still amount to something as Gatling guns and autocannons exist. On the offensive end, 22 autocannons will strip a layer of light armor at the press of a button. Heavy will certainly take longer, but if it's only a single layer, these weapons are still competitive. On the other hand, with Ruka's automatic fire and quick acceleration, we're capable of screening for missiles and light craft more accurately than a PDC. The onboard AI is tuned to target smallest first in support of that mission. The soft features of the craft include radar, Mother OS presence via the Almanac, hangar access via Action Relay, and, like the Mala and the Coastra, we've scrapped startup and shutdown timers in favor of an event controller. Connecting and disconnecting will appropriately set stockpile and charge settings as well as turning on and off ship functions. Those functions include the autocannons themselves. No negligent discharges in this force. And now, finally, my favorite light build. Yes, the Kujo is feature-dense and lore-heavy. Yes, the Rovoc is mechanically complex, and the Coaster is just pretty to me. And also yes, the Koolock is a bonus vessel. It doesn't come with a Brightcore blueprint, but it still is listed on my workshop. The Koolock is a bonus vessel because its purpose is more to destroy ships than that of a defensive vessel screening while the Brightcore destroys ships. They both do the same job, and neither is really designed to complement the other. Nonetheless, it's not impossible in my land of make-believe spaceships for these two to be deployed together, and it's also fun. So, bonus vessel. It is a longer range, burst fire version of the Ruka. Though landing a volley will slap most fighters out of the sky in one shot, due to its slightly diminished mobility and inability to maintain a stream of constant, effective fire, the Ruka has it beat pretty handily in the traditional air superiority role. I feel the Koolock fills the role of a sustained bomber. A single volley will punch through 2 or even 3 layers of heavy armor, which isn't that surprising as each assault cannon shell does 4,000 damage. With 23 cannons, that's 92,000 damage, just 2 shells under 2 large railgun sabos. It'll fire that out 10 times a minute while maintaining a slim, maneuverable profile. Though it doesn't come programmed with garage door codes like the other vessels here, it still has an action relay. The Brightcore uses a trunked radio setup, and accessing the network is pretty easy. In principle, it has a single traffic channel and a single control channel. You call the Breakor, which gives you a 5-second window to give commands. It's a little more than that, but setting it up is not. On the Koolock, map a key to set and send on channel 90, a Brightcore specific identifier, and map a key to set and send the appropriate command. In this case, that's a signal on channel 5 to open the combat hangar doors. Access terminates after 5 seconds, but if you want better RF hygiene, you can dial 91 to immediately open up the air again. Anyway, the Koolock has 4 large hydrogen tanks, 2 H2O2 generators, and weighs in at 107,000 kilos dry, and packs on an additional 60,000 or so in ammunition and ice. It has all the bells and whistles of the Ruka, but it'll also display ammunition and cargo stats. It does, also, feature Whiplash 141's salvo script. I don't use the default mode. On a vessel like this, it's not particularly productive. I bump the rounds per minute up to 2,000, which obviously is not sustained, but sends out a fast burst of assault cannon fire, and can be held for the duration, or used to shoot off 1 or 2 rounds. The former has its use engaging a target that is unfamiliar, or rapidly changing direction, and the latter is very nice in specific situations. The Helper, the Kucho, the Tug, the Mala, the Kostra, the Rovak, the Ruka, and even the Koolock exist as part of the larger weapons system that is the Breakor. They have their own hangars, access points, and logic systems throughout the ship. Included in the workshop download is 1 copy of each, in their respective homes. I love building in this game, and I'm coming to enjoy the process of making videos as well. It's providing a medium to communicate things that would be difficult to communicate otherwise, like an answer to the question nobody asked. What are you actually doing with your time? It's this, but it's also this. Thank you for watching.